My name is Keisha Williams. I'm 25 years old, and for 2 long years I served tables at a steakhouse where the customers thought my body was part of the menu. 2 years of dodging hands, 2 years of forced smiles, 2 years of pretending everything was fine when nothing was fine at all. I learned to dodge. I learned to smile through it. I learned to pretend I didn't notice when hands lingered too long on my lower back, or when eyes traveled places they had no business going. But what I also learned, after one too many incidents that went nowhere, was to document everything. And I mean everything. See, 6 months before this story really begins, I started wearing a small body camera clipped to my apron. It looked like a pen. Nobody noticed. Nobody ever noticed. The manager didn't know. The customers didn't know. But that little device knew everything. It saw what my complaints couldn't prove. It heard what my manager refused to believe. And on one Saturday night in November, it captured something that would change everything. A man grabbed me right in front of his wife, and when I pulled away, she didn't defend me. She blamed me, said I was the problem, said I was flirting with her husband, said I should be fired for being inappropriate. The manager? He believed her. But what none of them knew was that my body cam had been recording for the last 47 minutes. And what it captured wasn't just harassment, it was conspiracy. Before I continue this story, I need to ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments. I want to know. And while you're there, tell me this. Have you ever been blamed for something that wasn't your fault? Have you ever had someone twist the truth so hard that you started doubting yourself? Share your experience below. Your story matters. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and the little bell next to it. It helps this channel grow, and it means I can keep bringing you stories like this one. Oh, and if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's been through something similar, send them this video. They deserve to know they're not alone. Now let me take you back to the beginning, because what happened that Saturday night didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of 2 years of patterns, 2 years of dismissals, and 2 years of a manager who cared more about tips than he ever cared about his staff. The restaurant was called Thornwood Grill, upscale steakhouse on the east side of town. The kind of place where businessmen brought their wives for anniversary dinners, where politicians closed deals over bourbon, and where servers like me were expected to smile no matter what. I'd been there since I was 23. Started as a hostess, worked my way up to server. I was good at my job. Regulars asked for me by name. Tips were solid. I could manage a 12 top during a Saturday rush without breaking a sweat. But none of that mattered when it came to one thing: my complaints. In 2 years, I'd filed 7 informal reports about customer behavior. 7. Hands on my waist, comments about my body. One guy who followed me to my car after my shift and asked if I wanted to grab a drink. 7 reports. 7 times I went to my manager, a man named Rick Patterson, and explained what happened. And 7 times, I got the same response. That's just the restaurant industry, Keisha. These guys have had a few drinks. They don't mean anything by it. He tips $300 a night. You want me to ban him? Just smile and keep it moving. So I did. I smiled. I kept it moving. I perfected the art of the graceful sidestep. But after report number 7, something shifted in me. I stopped expecting Rick to help. I stopped expecting the system to protect me, and I started protecting myself. That's when I bought the body camera. It was small, sleek, looked exactly like a fancy ballpoint pen clipped to the pocket of my apron. Cost me $89 online. Best investment I ever made. I didn't tell anyone, not my coworkers, not my friends, definitely not Rick. I just started recording. Every shift, every table, every interaction. At first, nothing major happened. A few comments here and there. The usual low-grade nonsense I'd learned to tune out. But I kept the recordings anyway, organized them by date, backed them up to a cloud drive, built a library of evidence that nobody knew existed. Looking back, it's almost like I knew something big was coming. And then came the Davenports. Richard and Monica Davenport. I'll never forget their names. They walked in on a Saturday night in November, right in the middle of the dinner rush. Reservation for 2, 7:30, premium booth by the window. He was in his 50s, silver hair, expensive watch, the kind of man who looked at servers like we were part of the furniture. She was younger, maybe early 40s, designer dress, diamond earrings, the kind of woman who smiled with her mouth but never with her eyes. I didn't think much of them at first. Just another wealthy couple. Just another Saturday. If only I'd known what the next 3 hours would bring. If only I'd known that by the end of the night I'd be standing in Rick's office being accused of things I didn't do, while the real criminals sat in the dining room finishing their dessert. But that's the thing about moments that change your life. You never see them coming until they've already arrived, and by then, it's too late to do anything but survive them. Or, if you're smart, document them. I approached the table with my usual smile. Good evening. Welcome to Thornwood Grill. My name's Keisha, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with something to drink? Richard Davenport looked up from the menu. His eyes didn't meet mine. They traveled down, slowly, deliberately, like he was appraising livestock. I felt my skin prickle, but I kept my smile, locked in place. Give us the wine list, sweetheart, he said, and take your time bringing it back. That word, sweetheart, the way he said it, like he owned me. I nodded, still smiling, and turned to walk away. That's when I felt it. His hand, on my lower back. Not a brush, not an accident. A deliberate touch that lingered 2 seconds too long before sliding away. I didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't turn around. I just kept walking toward the bar, my body camera recording every single second. At the bar, I took a breath. Okay, Keisha, you've handled worse. Just document it and keep moving. But something about that touch felt different. It wasn't opportunistic. It was entitled. Like he did this all the time, like he expected to get away with it. I grabbed the wine list and headed back to the table. This time, Monica Davenport was watching me. Her eyes narrowed slightly as I approached, like she was calculating something. The wine list, I said, placing it on the table between them. Our sommelier recommends the 2018 Cabernet for the ribeye. Richard didn't look at the list. He looked at me. You're very attentive, aren't you? His voice was smooth, but there was something underneath it. Something that made my stomach turn. I'm just doing my job, sir. I'll give you a few minutes to decide. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. Don't rush off. We might have questions. I paused, turned back, smiled. Of course. Take your time. For the next 45 minutes, I served that table like I served any other. Brought their appetizers, refilled their water, checked on their steaks. But Richard Davenport wasn't like any other customer. Every time I approached, he found an excuse to touch me, a hand on my wrist when I set down his plate, fingers brushing my arm when I poured his wine. Once, when I leaned in to clear his appetizer plate, he put his hand on my hip and squeezed. Each time, I pulled away. Each time, he smiled like it was a game. And each time, Monica Davenport watched. Not with anger, not with jealousy, with something that looked almost like amusement. Like she'd seen this show before and knew how it ended. By 9:15, I'd had enough. I needed to report this. I needed Rick to intervene. I needed someone to tell this man that servers aren't toys. I found Rick in his office, scrolling through his phone. Rick, I need to talk to you about table 12. He barely looked up. The Davenports? What about them? The husband keeps touching me. It's happened at least 4 times tonight. I need you to say something to him. Rick sighed like I'd asked him to solve world hunger. Keisha, come on. Richard Davenport is one of our biggest customers. He spends $500 every time he comes in. So? So he's a little handsy. That's just how some guys are. You know that. I stared at him. I could feel my pulse in my ears. Rick. He grabbed my hip. That's not being handsy. That's harassment. Rick finally put down his phone and looked at me. His expression wasn't angry. It was tired, annoyed, like I was being difficult. Look, he said. I'll walk by the table. If I see anything inappropriate, I'll handle it. But I'm not going to accuse a customer of harassment based on your word alone. Okay? My word alone. 2 years. 7 reports. And my word still wasn't enough. Fine, I said. But I want it on record that I reported this. Rick waved his hand dismissively. Yeah. Noted. Now get back out there. You've got other tables. I walked back to the floor, my body camera still recording. If Rick wasn't going to protect me, the footage would. But what I didn't know was that the worst part of the night hadn't even started yet. What happened next would make everything before it look like a warm-up. And it would happen right in front of Monica Davenport's eyes. The Davenports were finishing their main course when I returned to check on them. I kept my distance this time, stayed professional, kept my arms close to my body so there was nothing for Richard to grab. How's everything tasting? I asked from a safe distance. Richard looked up at me with that same slow smile. It's perfect. But you know what would make it better? I didn't take the bait. Can I get you anything else? Just your company, sweetheart. He patted the booth seat next to him. Why don't you sit with us for a minute? Relax. I forced a polite laugh. I appreciate it, but I've got other tables to attend to. Can I bring out the dessert menu? Richard's smile faded. Just a fraction. But I saw it. He didn't like being told no. Maybe later, he said. We'll let you know. I nodded and turned away. Behind me, I heard Monica whisper something to her husband. I couldn't make out the words, but her tone was sharp, irritated. I hoped maybe she was telling him to stop. Maybe she'd finally had enough. I was wrong. 20 minutes later, I brought their check to the table. Richard signed it without looking at the total. $200 tip. More than generous. But when I reached for the check presenter, his hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was firm. Too firm. Hold on, he said. I want to tell you something. Sir, please let go of my arm. I didn't whisper. I said it clearly, loud enough for the tables nearby to hear. His grip tightened. I'm just trying to give you a compliment. Why are you being so cold? Monica laughed. A small, cruel sound. She's been cold all night, Richard. I told you she wasn't friendly. My heart was pounding now. Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time. Please let go. He didn't. Instead, he pulled me closer. Leaned in. His breath smelled like bourbon and arrogance. What's your problem? I tip you $200 and you act like I'm some kind of criminal? I yanked my arm back. Hard. Stepped away from the table. My wrist was red where his fingers had been. I'm getting my manager, I said. Don't bother. Monica Davenport stood up, smoothing her dress like she was about to address a board meeting. I'll be speaking to your manager myself, about your behavior. My behavior? She smiled. That cold, calculated smile I'd seen all night. You've been flirting with my husband since we sat down, touching him, making suggestive comments. I saw it all. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? Richard grabbed me. I didn't touch him. Monica shook her head like I was a child who didn't understand basic math. That's not what I saw. And that's not what I'll be telling your manager. I stared at her, at him, at the tables around us, where other diners were pretending not to watch. And then I understood. This wasn't spontaneous. This was a performance. They'd done this before. He harasses. She covers. And when the server fights back, they flip the script. They make her the villain. They'd probably gotten free meals this way, gotten servers fired, walked away clean every single time. But they'd never dealt with someone like me. They'd never dealt with someone who was recording. Rick appeared before I could say anything else. His face was already skeptical, already leaning toward the customers. What's going on here? Monica spoke first, her voice dripping with rehearsed concern. We've had a very uncomfortable experience tonight. Your server has been inappropriate with my husband all evening, flirting, touching, making him uncomfortable. Rick's eyes flicked to me. Keisha? That's not true, I said. Mr. Davenport has been touching me all night. I reported it to you an hour ago. He grabbed my wrist just now. Look. I held up my arm. The red marks were still visible. Rick looked at my wrist, then at Richard Davenport, then at Monica. Mr. Davenport, he said carefully, is there any truth to what she's saying? Richard laughed. A warm, disarming laugh. Absolutely not. I might have accidentally brushed her arm once or twice, but that's it. She's been the one crossing lines, making comments, standing too close. My wife will tell you the same thing. Monica nodded. It's been very uncomfortable. We come here for a nice dinner, and instead we're subjected to this kind of behavior from the staff. I felt the floor shift under me. Rick was nodding along, believing them. Two strangers against me. Their word against mine. Their money against my job. Keisha, Rick said, I think you should go to my office and wait there. We'll discuss this after the Davenports have left. I didn't move. Are you kidding me? Keisha. Now. His voice was firm. Final. The kind of voice that said this conversation is over and you lost. I looked at the Davenports one last time. Richard was smirking. Monica was examining her nails like I'd already ceased to exist. Fine, I said. But you're making a mistake. I walked toward the back, my heart pounding, my wrist still throbbing. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd played the system one more time. But they'd forgotten one thing. My body camera was still recording. And it had captured every single word, every single touch, every single lie. The next 30 minutes would change everything. And not in the way Rick Patterson expected. In his office, I waited. Didn't sit. Didn't pace. Just stood there, running through the footage in my mind. I knew exactly what was on that camera. The question was, how to use it. Rick walked in 20 minutes later. His face was grim. Keisha, we need to talk about what happened out there. The Davenports have made a formal complaint. They're saying you sexually harassed Richard Davenport. I laughed. A real laugh. The kind that comes out when reality gets so absurd you can't hold it in. They said I harassed him? Rick crossed his arms. This isn't funny. They're threatening to post a review online. They're talking about contacting corporate. This is serious. What's serious? I said, is that you're about to fire me for something I didn't do based on the word of two people you just met tonight. That's serious. Rick's jaw tightened. I'm not firing you. Yet. But I am suspending you pending an investigation. You'll need to turn in your apron and go home. And the Davenports? What happens to them? They've already left. I comped their meal as an apology for the uncomfortable experience. You comped their meal? After he grabbed me. Rick, I reported this to you. Tonight. An hour before it escalated. I told you he was touching me and you did nothing. Rick's face flushed. I walked by the table like I said I would. I didn't see anything inappropriate. That's because you weren't looking, I said quietly. But I was. I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out the body camera. His eyes narrowed. What is that? It's a body camera, I said. I've been wearing it for 6 months. And tonight, it recorded everything. Rick went pale. Keisha, you can't just record customers without their consent. That's illegal. Actually, I said, this is a one-party consent state. I looked it up before I bought it. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's legal. And I knew. So it's legal. What's on that camera? Everything. Every time Richard Davenport touched me. Every word Monica Davenport said to cover for him. Every lie they told you. And, I added, your conversation with me when I reported it the first time, when you told me he tips $300 and asked if I really wanted you to ban him. Rick didn't speak. He just stared at the camera in my hand like it was a bomb about to detonate. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm going to go home tonight. But I'm not suspended. I'm not fired. And on Monday, I'm going to speak with corporate myself. I'm going to show them this footage. And we're going to have a very different conversation than the one you were planning. Rick found his voice. Keisha, let's not be hasty. Maybe we can work something out. I'm done working things out, I said. I've been working things out for 2 years. 7 reports. 7 times you did nothing. Well, now I have proof. And proof doesn't negotiate. I turned and walked out of his office. Behind me, I heard him reach for his phone, probably calling corporate himself, probably trying to get ahead of the story. But it didn't matter. The story was already written. It was on my camera, and in 47 minutes of footage. The Davenports, the touches, the lies, the cover-up. All of it. That night I went home and watched the footage 3 times. It was worse than I remembered. Richard Davenport's hands on my body. 6 separate times. His wife's cold smile. Her careful lies. And Rick, dismissing me like I was an inconvenience. I saved copies everywhere. Cloud drive, external hard drive, emailed to myself. Sent one to my sister with instructions to release it if anything happened to me. Maybe that sounds paranoid, but I'd seen how this worked. I'd seen how powerful people protected each other, how women like me disappeared from the narrative. I wasn't going to disappear. On Monday morning, I didn't wait for corporate to call me. I called them first. Spoke to a woman named Patricia Chen in Human Resources. Explained the situation. Told her about the footage. Her voice changed when I mentioned the body camera. She suddenly became very, very interested. Can you send us the footage? She asked. I can, I said. But first, I want a few things in writing. I want confirmation that I'm not suspended. I want a guarantee that no retaliation will occur. And I want a formal investigation into Rick Patterson's handling of harassment complaints. There was a long pause. Ms. Williams, those are significant requests. I understand, I said. And so is the footage I have. Would you like me to describe what's on it? Another pause. Then, send it over. We'll review it immediately. I sent the footage that afternoon. 2 hours later, Patricia Chen called me back. Her voice was different now. Softer. Almost apologetic. Ms. Williams, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We've reviewed the footage and I have to tell you, it's deeply disturbing. I didn't say anything. Just waited. We're launching a full investigation, she continued, not just into this incident, but into Mr. Patterson's handling of harassment complaints over the past several years. You mentioned you'd filed previous reports? 7, I said. Over 2 years. None of them were documented in your personnel file. I know. She exhaled slowly. I'm so sorry this happened to you. I believe you. 3 words. I believe you. In 2 years at Thornwood Grill, No one had ever said those words to me. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," she said, "we investigate. And I can tell you this much right now. Rick Patterson will not be your manager by the end of the week." That wasn't all that happened. But what came next surprised even me. And it wasn't just about Rick Patterson. The investigation uncovered something much bigger. Something that involved the Davenports themselves. Turns out, my instinct was right. They had done this before. Multiple times. At restaurants all over the city. The pattern was always the same. Like a choreographed dance they'd perfected over years. Richard would harass a server, make her uncomfortable, push boundaries, and then Monica would swoop in, accusing the server of inappropriate behavior, flipping the script, making the victim into the villain. The restaurant would comp their meal to avoid a scene. The server would be fired to protect the business. And the Davenports would walk away clean, pockets full and conscience empty. They'd probably been doing it for years, maybe decades. But this time, there was footage. And once corporate started digging, they found other victims. 3 other servers from 3 other restaurants came forward after my story started circulating. All of them had been fired. All of them had been blamed. All of them had been silenced. Until now. By the end of the month, the Davenports were facing multiple civil suits. Richard was charged with misdemeanor assault after one of the other servers pressed charges. Monica was named as a co-defendant in a civil conspiracy case. Their names ended up in the local news. Country club couple accused of serial harassment scheme. I watched the story break from my couch, eating ice cream, and feeling something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Vindicated. Rick Patterson was terminated 2 weeks after I sent the footage. Turns out I wasn't the only one he'd ignored. The investigation found 11 unreported harassment complaints in his tenure. 11 servers who went to him for help. 11 times he chose the customer over his staff. When I walked back into Thornwood Grill a month later, there was a new manager, a woman named Denise Brooks. First thing she did was call a staff meeting and announce new harassment policies. 0 tolerance, immediate documentation, mandatory reporting to corporate. She didn't mention my name, but when our eyes met across the room, she nodded. Just once. That was enough. But the story didn't end there. 3 months after the investigation closed, I filed an EEOC complaint against Thornwood Grill. Not for the Davenport incident, for the 2 years of ignored reports, for the 7 complaints that went nowhere, for every time Rick Patterson told me to smile and keep moving. The EEOC took my case seriously. They had my footage, my documentation, the testimony of other servers, and they had something else. Records showing that Rick Patterson had been warned about his handling of harassment complaints before, twice. Both warnings were buried in his file. Both times, management looked the other way. The settlement came 6 months later. I can't tell you the exact number. Part of the agreement was confidentiality. But I can tell you this. It was enough to pay off my student loans. Every single one of them. It was enough to put a down payment on a house, a real house, with a yard and a front porch. It was enough to start fresh, to breathe, to finally feel like the system had worked, even if I'd had to drag it kicking and screaming to do the right thing. Thornwood. Grill didn't close, but they paid. In money, in reputation, in policy changes that should have happened years ago. The Davenports paid too. Richard's assault charge was plea bargained down to a fine and community service. But the civil suits hit harder. 3 servers, 3 settlements. By the time it was over, Richard and Monica Davenport had lost more than money. They'd lost their standing, their reputation. Their country club membership was revoked after the story made the society pages. Last I heard, they'd moved to another state. Florida, maybe, or Arizona. Somewhere warm where nobody knew their names. probably trying the same scheme somewhere else, probably targeting new servers at new restaurants in new cities. But now their names are on Google. Now their faces have been in the news. Now their mugshots are public record. Now, every server who searches their name before taking their table will know exactly who they're dealing with. Every hostess who Googles them before seating them will see the headlines. Every restaurant manager who does a quick background check will find the articles. That's not nothing. That's consequence. As for me, I don't work at Thornwood anymore. 6 months after the settlement, I quit. Not because I was unhappy, because I was ready for something new. I'm at a different restaurant now. Better management, better culture, better everything. I still wear my body camera. Some habits are hard to break. But I haven't needed it once. Not once in 8 months. Turns out when you work at a place that takes harassment seriously, harassment tends not to happen. Who knew? Last month, I ran into one of my former coworkers from Thornwood. She told me something that made me stop in my tracks. You know, she said, after everything came out, 3 other servers started wearing body cameras too. They said you inspired them. I didn't know what to say to that, but I thought about it for days after. 3 servers. 3 cameras. 3 women who decided they weren't going to be silenced anymore. Maybe that's the real ending to this story. Not the settlement, not the headlines, not the Davenports fleeing to another state. Just 3 women with cameras deciding that their word matters, that their safety matters, that they're not going to wait for someone else to protect them. Because sometimes the system doesn't protect you. Sometimes the people who are supposed to help you are the same people who look the other way. And when that happens, you have 2 choices. You can accept it, or you can document it. I chose to document. And that little body camera, that $89 pen clipped to my apron changed everything. Not because it was magic, not because it was special, but because it told the truth when everyone else was willing to lie. Richard Davenport grabbed me. He grabbed me like he owned me, like I was property, like I was nothing. Monica Davenport blamed me. She blamed me with a smile on her face and ice in her eyes. Rick Patterson dismissed me, but the camera believed me, and in the end, that was enough. So if you're watching this, and you're going through something similar, I want you to know something. Your word matters. Your experience matters. And if nobody believes you, find a way to make them. Document everything. Save everything. Protect yourself. Because the people who should protect you, they might not. But you can protect yourself. I did. And I'd do it again. A year later, I drove past Thornwood Grill on my way to somewhere else. There's a new sign out front now. New management, new brand. They're trying to distance themselves from everything that happened. I thought about stopping, going inside, seeing if anything had really changed. But then I kept driving. That place wasn't my story anymore. My story was the footage, the fight, the women who came after me with their own cameras and their own truth. My story was learning that sometimes justice doesn't come from the people in charge. Sometimes you have to create it yourself. I created mine. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where no one believes you, where the system is stacked against you, where the people who hurt you have more power than you do, remember this. The truth is a weapon. And the best weapon is the one they don't see coming. Richard Davenport never saw my camera. Monica Davenport never suspected. Rick Patterson had no idea. They all thought I was just another server, just another target, just another woman who would smile and take it. They were wrong. And now, every time someone searches their names, every time a server looks up the Davenports before taking their reservation, every time a manager thinks twice about dismissing a harassment complaint, they'll be reminded, They'll be reminded that one server, one camera, and one decision to document everything brought down a system that had been protecting predators for years. I'm not special. I'm not brave. I'm just someone who got tired of being ignored. And if that's you too, if you're tired of being dismissed and silenced and blamed for things that aren't your fault, then do what I did. Document. Save. Protect yourself. Because one day you might need proof. And when that day comes, you'll be ready. I was. And it changed everything. This is Keisha Williams. And that's my story. If you made it to the end, thank you for listening. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in my situation. Would you have worn the camera? Would you have filed the complaint? Would you have fought back? I want to hear from you. And if this story meant something to you, hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because there are more stories like mine out there. Women who were blamed. Women who were silenced. Women who are still waiting for someone to believe them. Maybe your share will be the thing that helps them realize they're not alone. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and remember, the truth is a weapon, use it wisely.